to give a bit of a context. So maybe I'll pause here for 5 minutes, and maybe you can discuss this in pair or triples on the major trends you observe, because this will be a foundation on what we need to look and what we need to work on the second phase. So may I request you to speak with your neighbor on this question. I think everyone is thinking for themselves. I want us to discuss. That's why I'm posing. And of course, I mean, like the approach, process, and practices, along with the challenges, they have been presented in the by all the member states the last 2 days. So again, it's just to recall that bit and think about what we are looking in terms of labor migration dynamics.
So group delegates, let's break into groups of 3 or 4, have the discussions in 5 minutes because of time constraints. We only have 5 minutes to discuss, and so I advise that we break into a group, maybe each table, please break into 2 or 3 groups of 4 or 3, and then we have the discussion in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Shah.
Kindly project the question on the screen. Yes. So our 5 minutes of discussions are over. I'll let our presenter, Mr. Ephraim, continue.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I see the discussions were live and still going on. That's interesting. And really the purpose of asking this question is we all are experts and you all are senior officials and you have that knowledge. It's just to give that opportunity to reflect amongst yourselves and take a movement to think through. So I think that's pretty much it. In the subsequent slides, I will highlight some of the major trends, challenges we see. And at the end, through the chair, I will also give the opportunity for others to complement. So the first one is really related to the dynamics we see in the region. Over the last decade or so, we see an increasing outflow of migrant workers, particularly to the Middle East. And some of the literature also referred this trend as the Horn of Africa Middle East migration corridor. So when we look at this movement from the Horn of Africa to the Middle East, we see a significant increase in numbers from all IGAD member states, but also from other African countries. For example, countries in West Africa, like Nigeria, countries in North Africa, Morocco, and some others. There is an increasing movement of African workers, and particularly workers from the East and Horn of Africa region to the Middle East. But there are also certain nuances that we need to pay attention to. One is when we look at the sectors of employment in this migration dynamics, or the mobility from the Horn of Africa to the Middle East, we see a lot of workers are going to get employment in domestic work and construction sectors. There are also few exceptions and countries that are looking for qualified and skilled workers even in high professional sectors, but the majority is in low-skilled sectors like domestic work and construction. And the characteristics of employment, work relation, and also employment conditions in the sectors are generally characterized by low wage or low payment, abysmal working conditions, and protection challenges. It's not, and it's something we all hear in the news, and the information we get from our embassies and consulate that migrant workers and our citizens in the Middle East face a number of protection and risks and challenges while they perform their jobs. So this is one nuance. And the second aspect, maybe not in the strict sense of corridor, is the intra-regional mobility. Studies have indicated that the majority of migrants in Africa stay within Africa. Actually, the third African Migration Statistics report indicates that about 80% of the mobility happens within Africa. So if this is so, I think it's important for us and for IGAD Secretariat, the member states, to really reflect on our capacity for analyzing changing labor markets and workforce needs, both internally in our countries, within the IGAD region, and also internationally. What are the opportunities for skills development, harmonization of curriculums, qualifications, and all that. I think it's important for us to reflect along those questions and develop the required workforce that will be engaged in productive work within the region or outside the region. So when we talk about skills development, for example, in the context of migration to the Middle East, what are our capacities to build the capacity and the skills of potential migrants to claim their rights, to defend their rights, but also to perform their jobs and duties in the countries of destination. So what are the mechanisms for skills development? And if we are looking into high-skilled professionals, what are the systems and processes we have put in place to harmonize qualification of frameworks? These are things that require a reflection and thinking. At the same time, as IGAD, as a bloc, are there certain issues that we need to take into account to address this challenge? For example, the issue of skills development recognition. It's within the scope of the free movement of persons, and there is a specific article on harmonization of qualifications. So to what extent are we prepared to move along those directions and be able to develop the required workforce? Again, maybe looking into the Middle East corridor, do we need to develop a common skills development framework for certain sectors, subsectors, so that people will be trained and qualified to gain employment outside the region? Again, like I said, I'm just posing questions and highlighting the trends for us to start brainstorming and thinking for the second phase. Then the second issue is really related to labor market and labor migration data. A lot has been spoken by the representatives from the national statistical offices. I will not go into the details, but overall, labor market and labor migration data and statistics is a cross-cutting challenge across all the regions. There are some emerging good practices and trends we see in some of the countries, but in many, this is a persistent challenge. So what do we need to have up-to-date quality and relevant data and statistics on labor and employment in the IGAD region? And there has also been a long discussion on the need for developing a regional labor market information at IGAD level. So again, while there are still significant challenges that we need to work at national level, which we can provide our expertise, we also need to look at the regional level and see what we need to do in terms of improving labor migration data and statistics in the region. Of course, I would also like to take note that there are some initiatives and an ongoing work for improving migration data and statistics. I think the Regional Technical Working Group on Migration Data, it's a very good work in progress, but to put this into a system and a process, maybe we also need to take another step in terms of having maybe a regional labor market information system. This has been one of the issues we have been working with the IGAD Secretariat for some time, but maybe we need to reflect and see what we need to do as member states, IGAD Secretariat and partners on this front, because this is a persistent challenge and a critical one for developing appropriate policy frameworks and taking an informed position and decision when it comes to labor and employment. Then third one, or another trend we observe across the regions and in many of the member states, is on the development of policies, legislations, and all that. This is really a very good initiative. It showed the commitment of member states. It showed the commitment of the governments for effectively managing and governing migration in general, but also labor migration in particular. However, we also see certain challenges. that we need to address and, move to the next steps. So, for example, we have a number of migration policies or labor migration policies that has been on the pipeline for some time. Some of them might be technically reviewed, finalized, but not, adopted and enforced, putting, again, a change. Some of them are, outdated while they are still on draft. So some of them are also in the process. And in some countries, the policies have been developed, but not enforced. And again, contributing to another block of policies still in drafting. So from that perspective, what should be really the role of IGAD member states and partners to support you and basically the member states in this process? This is really a national jurisdiction, and it's mainly the decision of the member states, but as partners and stakeholders and looking the broader regional perspective, I think we don't need to produce another policy to keep it in a draft for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or even more. So while the efforts are highly appreciated, there is also a need for finalizing the policies and moving toward this implementation. Then labor attaches. I think this has also been discussed and raised by some of the member states previously. A number of IGAD member states are allocating labor attaches in the countries of destination to advance protection of migrant workers. But equally, there are certain pertinent issues that we need to reflect. Do we have the required number of labor attaches? Do we have labor attaches even with or in all the major countries of destination? To what extent are they trained with international instruments, with the national laws and legislations of the countries of destination? And to what extent does our labor attaches know each other in the countries of destination so that they can coordinate and collaborate, as we are coordinating and collaborating here under the auspices of the IGAD Secretariat? So these are issues and things we observe, and we also need to step up our thoughts and thinking at a regional level. So again, going still on the issue of labor attaches, I think improving their coordination, collaboration, strengthening their capacities are some of the issues that were also set out in the previous presentation and previous presentations, and also some of the common issues that were raised by even labor attaches themselves in our previous engagements. And here I think one important question I would like to pose, because there are also people from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here, is what are the possibilities for sharing embassy and consular service among IGAD member states? I know this is really, ambitious goal, but I think if we have to look at a regional perspective and enhance coordination and collaboration among embassies and consulates to advance labor migration, we also need to think one step ahead. Maybe not sharing embassy and consular services as a starting point, but how can the labor attaches and the embassies of our member states in the countries of destination coordinate and work together to address some of the common challenges? Because the challenges an Ethiopian migrant worker face in country X is the same as the challenge that a Ugandan or a Kenyan migrant worker face in country X. So from that perspective, at least with the list of information sharing, collaboration, coordination, what are, the basis and how should we move forward? I think these are critical questions we need to reflect and think about as we move forward. And for this, I think, again, under the observation of the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have the Vienna Convention of 1961, and Article 46 specifically talks about the possibility of offering consular services. So within the parameter of this international convention, what are the little things we need to do? Again, maybe sharing consular services at the highest level, but in terms of sharing information, coordination, collaboration, I think we need to reflect and see how our embassies coordinate in the countries of destination, sit together in the countries of destination, as we are sitting together here as an IGAD family, as IGAD member states. And that discussion, I think, will be relevant. Then I think the other issue is bilateral labor agreements. Again, this has been raised by a number of presenters previously, but pertinent questions still remain. How are the bilateral labor agreements drafted and negotiated? Are these bilateral labor agreements publicly available? How can we do or work together to avoid a situation of racing to the bottom? And I think these are pertinent issues that were raised during the different presentations in the past days. And one of the recommendations was about taking a common position on BLAs, or maybe having, negotiating from a common front, so to say. So from that perspective, again, my question, and maybe something we need to reflect moving forward is maybe having a harmonized one BLA might be the ideal situation, but still that might require a lot of work. But can we start with little things? Or look into the specific aspects of the BLAs where we need to take a common position. It could be, for example, about wages. It could be about putting a standard employment contract, which is applicable by, all member states as a minimum condition. Or putting a minimum protection standards in the countries of destination. And then little by little build common position, common understanding on the different pillars of BLAs. And maybe in the long term, we can have one harmonized BLA as an IGAD region. And for that matter, even maybe at the continental level, under the auspices of the African Union, to have a common BLA. And this kind of processes will really enable us to, take common positions, negotiate from a better position, and avoid the situation of racing to the bottom, as it was mentioned by Commissioner Lawrence the other day. Then this will take me to the issue of social protection. And here again, there are ongoing initiatives in terms of putting unilateral measures. For example, the Migrant Workers Welfare Fund in Kenya, Uganda, in Ethiopia, the Overseas Employment Proclamation have certain provisions for protection of migrant workers. But again, in the context of free movement of persons, the protocol also states the need for extending social protection for migrant workers through bilateral and multilateral mechanisms. And I think from that perspective, we need also to step up to ensure that migrant workers have appropriate coverage when it comes to social protection. Then again, another trend that we observe is when it comes to migration, see a lot of regional, intra-regional, inter-regional dialogues and discussions taking place. Again, dialogue is important, dialogue is critical, but moving forward, how can we ensure that the outcomes of these dialogues are properly implemented? Next week, the African GCC dialogue will be launched. Then I think the question will be, how can we make use of this dialogue as a platform, as a starting point? But second, how can the outcomes of these dialogues will be followed up? The same goes to the different platforms we have in the IGAD region or in the African continent. How can we follow up? Dialogues and discussions need to be properly followed up, and from that perspective, what can we do? I think these are important questions. Then multilateral agreements. We have the AU Continental Free Movement Protocol, we have the IGAD Free Movement Protocol, we have the AAC Common Market Protocol, we have a number of instruments. But again, when it comes to implementation, we have a serious challenge. For example, if we have to talk about the AU protocol, since it is adoption back in 2018, if I recall correctly, so far only 4 countries have officially ratified the protocol over the last 5-6 years. So how can we step up and move forward with the ratification of the conventions and its implementation? This also goes to the IGAD protocol on free movement of persons. We appreciate the member states' commitment with the adoption of the protocol back in 2021. And now it's signed by 5 countries, still 2 remaining, but we also need to think about the next step with regard to ratification, domestication, and implementation. Then the question is, what collective actions do we need to do as member states, as partners, as IGAD, or for that matter, as citizens of the region to advance the realizations and the principles and rights enshrined in these protocols? So, yeah, I think the trends and the issues can continue. Again, the purpose of this question is to highlight some of the trends we observe and pose a question for us to reflect in terms of what we need to look at when it comes to the second phase of FMPT. So with this, I will just stop now. I will hand over to the chair to facilitate a few reflections and discussions, and I will come back to this one in a bit. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ephraim Getinet, for your insightful presentation. And for this section, we will not have the normal question and answer session, but I will give an opportunity to each country to give us one emerging trend on that is specifically on approaches, processes, and practices on labor migration from the perspective of their respective countries. So, using the IGAD booklet, I'll start with Djibouti. Please give us one emerging trend on labor migration.
Assalamu alaikum tout le monde. Donc, je me présente encore une fois, Omar, du ministère du Travail. Donc, là, on a noté quelques défis et de bonnes pratiques donc, concernant le continent africain. Pour nous, lutter contre la migration illégale donc, est le principal défi concernant le marché du travail djiboutien, parce que cette migration illégale occupe une grande partie du marché du travail informel djiboutien, et cela met en danger ces pauvres personnes donc, qui sont victimes de la migration illégale. Aussi, comme principal défi, on peut aussi parler des partages de données qui sont donc on a l'impression qu'elles sont stagnées au niveau du continent africain, et il faut fluidifier les échanges des données sur les marchés du travail, et ainsi donc, partager et échanger les données au niveau de l'IGAD en premier lieu et ensuite au niveau continental. Il faut promouvoir, comme je l'ai dit hier dans ma présentation, la signature des accords bilatéraux de travail. Comme je l'ai si bien dit hier. Et enfin, comme bonne pratique, j'ai le niveau international. Il faut suivre aussi l'exemple du Rwanda qui a un SIMT très très performant, je pense, vu qu'ils publient tout sur leur site internet du LMAS. C'est tout ce que j'avais à dire sur la migration du travail. Merci.
Thank you very much, the delegate from Djibouti. The next country, please keep it short, concise, because of time. Kindly give us one emerging trend on labor migration, that is from the perspective of your country.
Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you, Ephraim, for the very beautiful and informative presentation. My name is Makalea from Ethiopia. Challenge as the other IGAD countries, we also have challenges that are common to most countries. But one challenge is sending out for overseas employment, sending out trained domestic workers, because most of the employees going out for work outside of the country are domestic workers, and having them properly trained and having them follow the regular or the legal way of dispatching is it's a challenge. But we have tried to tackle that challenge through the introduction and development of the Ethiopian labor market information system. So I refer this as a very good trend. We have almost fully automated our overseas employment system. So this is, I think, a very good example. I have mentioned this, I think, in the past gatherings. It's a very good experience and a very good way of handling the labor market of countries. So I take this as a very good example for other IGAD countries, following the Ethiopian trend and using the labor market information system to tackle a few of our problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, the delegate from Ethiopia. Next, we go to Kenya. Please give us one emerging trend on labor migration, that is.
One emerging trend that we have identified was free movement protocols, case in point what happened here at IGAD.
Thank you. That was short and straight to the point. The next country is Somalia.
Very good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chair, and thank you the insightful presentation, Mr. FMT. One emerging trend in Somalia, labor migration, is skills mismatch, and also low-skilled labor migrants. We would like to tackle the skills mismatch by developing a skills partnership with IGAD member states. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the good delegate from Somalia. Next, we move to South Sudan.
Okay, good morning. Like what the Labour Commission mentioned in the presentation yesterday, the day before yesterday, we in South Sudan, we have a lot of challenges in the area of protection of the migrant workers. In this area, it is difficult for us to collect the information of the migrant workers in our country because all of them are in the informal sector. So we need is actually to get the information for the all migrant workers, and then it will be very easy for us to protect them in the all areas, whether in the social protection or in these areas. So it is very important. This is one of the lack of important area of the protection of the migrant workers in terms of the area of collection of the data for the migrant workers in the informal sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the delegate from South Sudan. The next, the Republic of Sudan. Just one emerging trend on labor migration. Oh, okay. The delegates from Sudan have informed that their labor representative was not. So we move to the last, and that is Uganda.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Just before I give that one trend, for historical purposes, the region where you are right now is called Buganda. Now, when the British came here and they gave us independence, they decided to drop the letter B. And so this country became Uganda, not Buganda. So technically speaking, we should have been the first people to speak because the country would have been called Buganda before Djibouti. So that should have been the alphabetical order. But thanks to the British, we are now the last to speak. But anyway, so there are many trends we could talk about, but thanks to our comrade, Ephraim, we could give very many trends. But what we are observing in Uganda right now is a trend towards multilateralism. I mean, joint operation as a region, whether as African Union or IGAD or EAC, we are beginning to do things together. And I think that's the trend that we need to see ourselves doing. Joint cooperation, South-South cooperation, learning from each other, and being able to work with the countries of destination as one bloc. And that is really thanks to this project, and also, of course, other actors. So I think this is the way to go. Act as one, speak as one voice, and we will be able to work better towards safe, orderly, and regular migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the delegate from Uganda. This juncture, we come to the end of this session, but the good delegate from South Sudan has one burning question, and it is the last. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the fact that you have acknowledged that it's a burning question, because in the overview of your presentation, which is very good, it's a good presentation, but the general overview wasn't a good presentation in the interest of the Republic of South Sudan, because the map that you have put there is not the true map of the Republic of South Sudan. And as a member state, we are very sensitive when our map is misrepresented. So I would like the IGAD Secretariat to take note of that, because maps are very sensitive because they touch on sovereignty of the member state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the delegate from South Sudan. So we would have gone for the break, but Mr. Ephraim has requested that the next presentation is a short one, and he will take only 10 minutes. He has 4 slides to present. So please bear with us. Maximum 10 minutes. After that, we will go for our tea break. So Mr. Ephraim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify, I think South Sudan is reflected on this map. But if there is an oversight on that, we'll be looking into. All the IGAD member states are all reflected in the map. I think I just wanted to clarify on that. And I do take note of the concern, and we will do the needful to indicate all the member states are reflected. And thank you very much for the additional trends, I think quite relevant. So I will not summarize or paraphrase. These are, again, additions that I will add in the next presentation. So if you see my presentation building on this, that means I have picked on your brains. Thank you very much for the additions. Then I'm going to the second phase of FAMPT project. I'll just be quite brief. This is a long journey that we have gone through since 2021. And most of you in this room were part and parcel of this process. Just because Uganda is just in front of me, I can call on Commissioner Lawrence, I can call on Madam Mary, I can call on everyone in this room to remind of the journey we have started. I think the discussion on the second phase of the IFMPT project is started on 2021 when we hold the first IGAD Ministerial Conference on Labor Employment and Labor Migration, which came up with the Djibouti Declaration on Employment, Labor Employment and Labor Migration, and the suggestion and the recommendation from our ministers to develop a detailed implementation plan and a detailed implementation plan along with a monitoring and evaluation framework for its successful implementation. That's clearly specified in the declaration. So based on the guidance in the declaration and the guidance provided by the ministers, we organized the first high-level experts meeting on the Djibouti Declaration in December 2021. So during that workshop, we developed a detailed implementation plan along with the MND framework. Then the next part of the process was translating the declaration and its implementation plan into a programmatic document, which will further refine and help the Secretariat, member states, and partners to support and facilitate the implementation of the protocol. So a long process was followed in 2022, starting with the drafting of the concept note, followed by technical consultation between IGAD and ILO, and the draft of the first draft in May, and then this was followed by a regional consultation and from the member states during the workshop. Some member states also sent written comments to the program afterwards, and between June to December, we worked with the Secretariat to come up with a solid programmatic document that will guide the implementation of the Djibouti Declaration for a period of 5 years. Similarly, when we start 2023, the European Union was also in the process of developing their new programming cycle, and at that particular period, they were looking into regional priorities for the IGAD region. So we started the engagement with the European Union to basically see how the program for the implementation of Djibouti Declaration could be taken as a second phase. Then I think we hold the second ministerial meeting in March in Addis Ababa, 2023. During that period, the program for implementation of Djibouti Declaration was presented to the ministers for their review and endorsement. And as you may recall from the communique of that ministerial conference, the program for implementation of Djibouti Declaration, or PDD, was endorsed by the ministries as one of the regional flagship programs on what's going on here? Sorry. Program for on labor employment and, sorry, can I get your help, please? For the IGAD region, a regional flagship program. Then we followed with the European Union and tried to prioritize some of the result areas and some of the topics of interest to the EU to continue this program as a second phase to the FMPT project. Because when we look at the program for implementation of Djibouti Declaration, it's a broader program and it encompasses all the 7 priority topics of the Djibouti Declaration. And some of the issues are a little bit outside the scope of the or general area of migration, mobility, and labor migration. So we narrowed it down to focus on employment, mobility, both in the context of free movement of persons and transhumans. And we worked with the European Union delegation in Djibouti with the drafting of the action phase, which went through a regressive process of appraisal from March to November 2023. And late last year, the program was approved as one of the program priorities for the IGAD region at Brussels level. Currently, we are working on the detailed project document, which we plan to start basically as of next month. Then this is really a long process, and all of you are familiar with this. I just wanted to highlight the important milestones to refresh our memories and see where we start, how we came and reached to the point we are in. Then looking at FMPT2, as you can see, the project is titled as Support to Free Movement of Persons and Transhumans in the IGAD region. And it basically focuses on ratification and domestication of the IGAD protocols on free movement of persons and transhumans, as well as the implementation of Djibouti Declaration. It has 4 specific objectives. 1, looking into the free movement of persons, both ratification, domestication, and implementation. The second one is on labor employment and labor migration governance. The third specific objective is on ratification and domestication of the IGAD protocol on transhumans. And the last objective is on coordination, implementation, and monitoring and evaluation mechanisms for the IGAD protocol on free movement of persons and transhumans. Implementation period is 4 years, from 1 June 2024 to 31st May 2028, and it will be implemented by IGAD Secretariat, the ILO, and member states, as well as social partners. Total budget of the program is 15 million, as it was mentioned previously. Then, to give you a bit of a highlight in terms of the expected results or outputs, because it will be a long list and another long presentation if I have to go to the activities. The first result area, or the first objective, as I mentioned, is on the protocol on free movement of persons, and it has 4 specific outputs or expected results. 1 is to facilitate and support the signing and the ratification of the free movement of persons protocol. The second one is to support member states on the domestication of the free movement protocol into their national laws, legislations, policies, and processes. The third one is to build the capacity of member states to implement the protocol. And the last one is awareness raising and sensitization on the content and relevance of the free movement protocol. Then coming to the second specific objective, which is about labor migration. It has again 4 expected results or outputs. The first one is on the development of national and regional policy and strategies. The second one is on strengthening labor market information systems at national and regional level. And the third one is on enhancing protection of migrant workers within the region, but also outside the region, particularly the Middle East. And the last one is on strengthening the capacity of the trade unions, confederation, and the employers' confederation to advance labor migration and employment. Then coming to the third specific objective, which is on transhumans, we have another 4 outputs. Looking into one, again, the signing and ratification of the protocol on transhumans. Then second, looking at the domestication of the protocol on transhumans. Third, supporting and facilitating cross-border coordination and collaboration among member states on selected transhumans corridors. And lastly, supporting member states to map and identify and designate transhumans corridors. Lastly, when it comes to coordination and collaboration, monitoring and evaluation, we have 2 expected results or outputs looking into the development of a regional monitoring and evaluation framework and strengthening coordination and reporting on ratification and implementation of the protocol. Overall, as you can see, we have 10 expected results, and under which we have also quite a number of activities, both at national and regional level, which we will look forward implementing with all of you and addressing some of the challenges we have already discussed over the last 3 years. With this, I will finish my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and remain available for any question and clarification. Over to you, Chan.
Let's give a good round of applause to our presenter, Mr. Ephraim Gettinet. First, I sincerely apologize for extending our presentation duration. I know we are 1 hour past our tea time, but immediately after this presentation, we can head to the tea break. So, excellent, we have reached our end, that is for the morning session of these informative presentations. Thank you to the Sudanese delegation and Mr. Ephraim Gettinet for your insightful presentations. I also extend my gratitude to all of you for your patience and active participation. So without further ado, we can proceed for a tea break. And at this point, I cede the chairship to the Republic of to Ethiopia, that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank all the presenters and also the delegates for the active participation. Before we go to tea break, I would invite all of you to go outside for a group photo and then go for a 20-minute tea break, and we come back to continue with our question and answers, and that will be chaired by the Republic of Ethiopia. Thank you.
This is how it seems to me. Life is only therapy, real expensive and no guarantees. So I lie here on the couch with my heart hanging out, frozen solid with fear, like a rock in the ground. But you move me, you give me courage I didn't know I had. You move me, I can't go with you and stay where I am, so you move me. Here is how love was to me. I could look and not see, going through the emotions, not knowing what they mean. Yet it scared me so much that I just wouldn't budge. No. I might have stayed there forever if not for your touch. Oh, but you move me, yeah, out of myself and into the fire. You move
took my girl away. Now don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone?